Employees are not your friends, and the honest truth is that getting a job is just a business transaction. And companies will always assume that you don't know what they know, and they're gonna assume that you're desperate to get a job, and they use that to their advantage, especially regarding money. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about the sneaky things that employers do to pay you less money, and how you can be aware of them so you can make the money that you deserve. The sign-on bonus. In the very beginning of my career, I had very little experience negotiating salaries, especially since I had a lot of imposter syndrome. So whatever somebody wanted to offer me, I was gonna take it. But as time went on, I started to realize that I was really losing out on a lot of potential money because I would always get tricked into accepting a sign-on bonus, even though the salary that I wanted was a bit lower than what I was expecting. Now, just so we're clear, a sign-on bonus is a one-time payment that a company will give you to pretty much persuade you to be employed with them. This can be anywhere from a few $1,000s to $10,000 or more, depending on what type of position that you're applying for. So here's a tactic that a lot of companies like to use to get the sign-on bonus to work more in their favor and not in yours. Let's say you're applying for a job and you're interviewing and they offer you a salary of $80,000. But through your research and just through what you think the position is worth, you really want it around $95,000. So they offer you the position for 80 and you send your counter offer for 95,000. And they respond and say that they can't go that high in salary. They'll say, okay, we can go from 80 to 85,000 per year for your salary and we'll give you a $10,000 sign-on bonus. So anybody would think, okay, I got 85 plus 10,000. I got my 95,000 that I was looking for, but not so fast. One thing about the sign-on bonus is that it's taxed a lot differently than like your regular weekly or bi-weekly paycheck. And when I mean differently, I mean you get taxed a lot on the sign-on bonus. It feels like you get maybe between 50 to 60% of the sign-on bonus. So if they say they're gonna give you a $10,000 sign-on bonus, you can count on maybe $5,000 to $6,000 actually hitting your account, depending on your tax situation. That's the first thing. The second thing is that a sign-on bonus typically has some type of stipulation that they might not share with you. 9 times out of 10, all of the money hit your account is not really your money just yet. And I learned this the hard way. A job that I had a few years ago, they gave me a nice sign-on bonus and I left the company right before a year. To my surprise, I didn't know that I had to have been with the company for at least a year to get the entire sign-on bonus. So on my last check, they prorated the entire amount of my sign-on bonus for that time that I was with the company up to those 11 months. And they took the difference out of my last check and that money was returned to the company. So be careful when you're negotiating your salary and they try to really push this sign-on bonus. Just remember that you're gonna get taxed a lot on it. And 2, it's not really your money because you're probably gonna have to be with the company for a certain amount of time or they're gonna take some of it back. The next thing is they just straight up lie. As I mentioned, negotiating salaries for me was a bit tough because I dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome. I didn't really know how much a position was actually worth. I didn't know how much I was worth on my skill set. So people could tell me things and I would just believe it. They would tell me how a certain position was only worth a certain amount for salary and how they have different brackets for positions, all this kind of stuff, basically saying we don't have more money. And I believe all of this until I talked to a friend of mine that explained to me how all of this works. She worked as a financial analyst for a very well-known company and she saw the behind the scenes of what these directors and these managers do when they want to hire somebody. I remember her telling me about a director had moved some money around from his own personal budget to get this guy hired that they were really excited about, even though he was asking for more money than what the position was allocated for. Now I know that sounds a bit shady, but this happens all the time. People move money around depending on who it's for and what it's for. So don't always believe when someone tells you that they don't have it. Now out of college, I ended up working in pest control before I got into the software field. And the benefits at that job were absolutely terrible. My health benefits were bad, but the main thing that stuck out was I didn't have a lot of PTO. I think I had maybe 2 weeks of PTO for the entire year, which is not a lot. But as I made my way into software and I got into one of my better jobs, they marketed that they had unlimited PTO. And to me, that sounded amazing. That was something brand new that I had never heard of, and it didn't really seem real. I'm thinking I can take PTO whenever I want, and it was true. Whenever I requested PTO, I never got any pushback. I never got any problems at all the entire time I was there. But over time, I got curious to see exactly how much PTO I was using with this unlimited balance. So I checked into my records and I saw that I really didn't take as much PTO as I thought. This whole idea of unlimited PTO actually made me take less PTO. It's kind of like one of those things where you know you have an unlimited supply of something and you don't really value it or use it as much. Compared to back when I was working in pest control, I had 2 weeks of PTO. I made sure I was going to take those 2 weeks before the year was done. Realizing that I didn't take much PTO made me see of how much time I was focused on just delivering for the company and for their own goals. I didn't put put a lot of focus on my own personal development, or even just taking breaks and resetting every now and then. I wasn't focused on creating other incomes, and I was only focused on delivering for the company. That's one part, but the second part, and probably the worst part, is what happens when you leave your job that offers unlimited PTO. Companies that don't have unlimited PTO count each day of PTO as pretty much a work day. So let's say I worked at a company that had 2 weeks of PTO. I only took 1 week of PTO and ended up leaving the company. Well, then they'll have something that's called a payout. They'll pay me for that extra week of PTO that I didn't take. But when a company offers unlimited PTO, there is no payout because there is no balance that's owed to you. Remember, you can take PTO whenever you want. So the unlimited PTO thing works great for companies for 2 reasons. One, they know that most people won't take as much PTO as they think they will. And 2, whenever all these people end up leaving the company, there is no payout. They don't have to owe them any other money, and there is no extra money going into their last check. So unlimited PTO sounds good, but just understand that it's only really good when you're there. But when you're leaving, you're gonna wish that you probably had some leftover balance that you built up over time that you can get paid for. Then you have the dreaded performance reviews. In my opinion, performance reviews are just a way for companies to be able to justify why they're only gonna give you a small merit increase per year that won't even match inflation anyway. And it's also a way to make employees work even harder each year that they're there. An example from one of my jobs was we had quarterly and yearly performance reviews, and there were 3 levels that you would get graded on. The first level is basically, hey, you're not doing a good job at all. You might be losing your job soon, which is the very negative review. The second was basically just to keep doing what you've been doing. You're doing fine. You're not outstanding. You're not bad. We like you here. Just keep doing what you're doing. And the third level was you're exceptional. You've done something that drastically changed the department or changed the company, and that was the highest rating that you could get. Now, depending on which rating that you were graded for, that would determine your merit increase. Now, as you know, 99% of the people will fall within that middle range, and they will get the very standard merit increase, which is not a lot. Now, if you somehow were graded to get into the highest level, then you would get an above average merit increase. But what do you have to do to get into that higher level? You have had to have done something that changed the course of your team, changed the course of your department, something that was seen on a global scale within the company. This was also subjective to your manager to determine also if you had such a big impact that you deserve this third level. So all of this put a lot of extra demand on employees on top of the things that they were responsible for just on a daily basis. And this is why I think that performance reviews are used by companies so they can't justify giving you an above average merit increase. They will just blame it on the fact of the level that you fell into for your performance review only justified a certain percent, because they know that 99% of the people at that company are gonna fall within that middle range anyway. Then vesting. One of my more recent jobs, I remember them telling me about the perks of their 401k match. Now, each company is probably gonna match a certain percent based on what you put in. Around 6% is the standard, but you have some companies that do more, some companies that may do less. But I was told that if I max out my 401k contributions, they would match my 6% and they would give an extra 2% on top of that. So an 8% total. Now, there's always my goal to be as aggressive as possible when it comes to accounts and building wealth and building money. So I was looking forward to this 8% that I was going to be getting. And throughout the year, I was seeing this extra 2% coming into my account until I ended up leaving the company. I started to do some research to see what happens to people that resign from the company and what other information I needed to know as I was leaving. And to my surprise, I found that this extra 2% will only be vested into my account for good if I was with the company for at least 3 years or more. So all of the extra 2% that I saw coming into my account is coming out of my account because I wasn't with the company for 3 years. Now, when I was told about this extra 2%, this was not something that was explained to me about the vesting period. No one mentioned 3 years. No one mentioned anything. They just told me, we have great benefits here. We'll match your 401k and give you an extra 2%, and that was it. And this is another way that companies pay you less money than you deserve. Sometimes they straight up lie. Other times they lie by omission. They don't tell you certain things that you need to know and things that you won't find out until you leave the company. So all these examples are ways that you just need to be a little bit more skeptical when you're negotiating with someone and just understand that this is a business transaction. But that's what I have for you in this video. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.